Hello everyone, and welcome again to the show. I am your host, the one and the only proud 4%er, where I take my time to help you, my viewers, think outside of the 96% Democratic black voting box. Okay, grab your 10-minute cup of coffee and let's jump to it. A friend asked me that proverbial question rhetorically regarding violence 18 years ago, but specifically directed toward our black community. At a time when drugs and violence was pandemic across the nation, he posed the question after expressing his angst over the continued failure of the so-called black leadership, aka Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Maxine Waters, and organizations like the NAACP, who had not up to that point done anything viable to solve the growing problem. I expressed to him then, as I advocate now, there is no blanket solution which those leaders then and now can spray out over the black community that would eradicate the violence or drug epidemic that would result in an instant cure for the black community. You know as I, that those so-called leaders are not interested in any viable solution because they survive only by those and other negative conditions existing. If they were to rid the community of them, then they have no reason for being. Simply stated, it's job security. With that said, I do have a strong thought, or rather a logical philosophy that, if indeed is implemented, would drastically reduce, if not totally eradicate, the violence in the community and perhaps, ultimately, the nation. Caveat: total eradication would be only in my, and maybe others if they care to join me, utopic world. Nonetheless, my philosophy was, and is based on the basic practical principle of family. And here is how it works. My friend and I both had 3 children. The oldest was my 13-year-old and the youngest was his 3-year-old. I said to him, think about it. We both have 3 opportunities each to send productive citizens out into society, and the question is, what will we do with them? Meaning those 6 separate individual opportunities. We are obligated to instill ethics of behavior that will be beneficial to society into the very core of our children by being examples ourselves without compromise. To expect anyone else to do it for us would be no less to parental malpractice and a crime perpetrated against them by us, and in order to do so will take nothing less than willing and extreme personal sacrifice on our part. I am proud to say today that the end results have proven that philosophy espoused by this layman, with 2 women and 4 men in the black community who are educated with either masters in their field of study or are currently working toward such. There are no out-of-wedlock children, no one on drugs or have ever used, and certainly none have participated in any acts of violence causing any detriment to society. In fact, they have been models of which their contemporaries have looked to as guidelines to follow. And I must say this did not come about without criticism that my friend and I was setting them up to be ostracized from the community by forcing them to carry and present themselves in a respectable manner at all time, by engaging in the proper use of the English language, as well as inappropriate public dress. Side note to this effect: when my eldest, now 34, was a freshman in high school, she came home distraught one day because a number of her fellow black schoolmates had called her an Ario. When friends and family learned that I had dealt with the issue by instructing her just to be the best Ario she could be, that went over like hellfire. The lesson that I shared with my daughter that day, as I did with my latter 2, was this: don't ever let anyone decide for you who you are to be, how you are to act, or how you are to speak. In other words, you decide for yourself the black person you will be. Christopher App said quite nicely in an earlier post, no person, whether they be white, brown, red, yellow, or even black like me, have a right to control my mind or my actions by forcing me to think or believe like they do under threat of ostracization, ridicule, or banishment. I would always tell them, their problem is not your problem. The long and the short of it, to the seemingly complex problem, is really this simple: parenting. It was not an accident that my friend and I sent 6 black young adults off to university as freshmen. It was on purpose. It was not an accident that my friend and I have no children that have never been involved in gangs, drugs, violence, or out-of-wedlock childbirths. It was on purpose. If there's one philosophical concept that I try to get across to young black parents today, is this: you get out of your children exactly what you expect. And those expectations should indeed be their purpose. Forgive me for this long thought on the subject, but I think that in short this is the only way to truly stop the culture of violence. As a people, we have over the last 50 years set social expectations for ourselves quite low, and now especially our young black women, who now accept maladjusted, truncated versions of what a man should be, which I am sorry to say is personified in the hip-hop and rap culture, which stifles the mental and social maturity of the masses that are caught up in its full characterization of manhood. If you are like me and have been observant of those that I personally know, have witnessed 50-year-olds acting and presenting themselves as 18-year-olds, never reaching the cusp of the age of majority, thereby resulting in a dilemma which plagues my 34- and 30-year-old professional daughters, and many other young black women in our community, who are sadly finding it extremely difficult to encounter any compatible counterparts, whereby many then falter, lowering their standards in an attempt to engage the unequally yoked into a meaningful, but yet most likely doomed relationship. As well, there are mass numbers of our vulnerable and precious young black women who, in order to attract such socially maladjusted, present themselves in like manner by taking on the debased persona as portrayed in the world of hip-hop and rap, might I add. A characterization for both our young black men and women that has become a deeply set neurosis that the community has turned a blind eye to, because the behavior is now considered normal. I could go on with cultural examples of what has caused the problem with violence, but I learned long ago to focus on the solution. But one final observation of that which is endemic in the black community, that if we allow to continue as parents, will exacerbate any inability of our youth to confidently stand on principle, such as by the life lesson reinforced in Christopher App's mind, which again he posted earlier reflecting on Kunta Kinte in the movie Roots, that even though the Mata had control over Kunta's physical body, he never had control of his mind and his spirit. Thereby Kunta standing on this principle: no person, whether they be white, brown, red, yellow, or even black like me, has a right to control my mind or my actions by forcing me to think or believe like they do under threat of ostracization, ridicule, or banishment. They, referring to our black youth, will succumb to the idiotic psychobabble of who is and what is black by self-ordained determinist, such as the likes of ESPN's Rob Parker, in his infinite yet dumb-headed and baseless wisdom, believe he is able to designate which of us meets his protocol, and therefore is capable of determining which of us are qualified to don the title of being black or a real brother. And if our youth, by their self-determined way of presenting themselves, publicly does not ascribe to such, they then are relegated to carry about in life the ostracized and castigated moniker of being a cornball brother, as in the case of NFL's Washington Redskins quarterback Robert Griffin III, a brother that, according to dimwit Rob Parker, any real black man would not want to hang out with. I will end by saying this: based on the Urban Dictionary's definition of cornball brother, my friend and I have sent 6 of those out into society, and if every black parent from this point forward is scribed to do the same, in a generation and a half, violence, drugs, gang involvement, and unwed mothers, problem solved. This is just my opinion, although it is predicated upon rather strong empirical data. FYI, according to the Urban Dictionary, a cornball brother is an African-American male who chooses not to follow the stereotype. This includes, but is not limited to, being educated, well-spoken, a role model, a leader, selfless, an upstanding member of the community, and above all, humble. Now, may I ask you, what's wrong with that? Well, folks, that's all the time I have in this segment. As always, until we next meet, this again is your host, the one and the only, proud 4%er, providing you with the necessary tools to cut your way out of the 96% Democratic black voting box.